Hey everybody, welcome to this week's Prophecy Update. As always, it's our desire to bring the events that are happening in the world from a biblical perspective and also a prophetic perspective. So thanks for joining us this week. What we want to talk about this week is a tactic that's being used to destroy Western society. And it's what I've entitled the Globalist Transgender Tactic. As you know, a lot of this transgender phenomenon has been happening in the last probably 5 years or so, and it's escalating around the world. We're seeing this in cartoons, we're seeing this with companies like Disney, we're seeing this in education as they want to groom kids towards the LGBT lifestyle and the transgender lifestyle. And we're seeing this phenomenon among teenagers, especially girl teenagers, having this major issue in their life where they want to transition to be a boy or whatever. What is behind all of this? Why is it all popping up right now? What are the globalists doing with this? What is Satan doing with this? Well, we're going to answer these questions on today's broadcast. So join us as we analyze from a biblical standpoint why this is happening, and you'll see that it has a biblical reason and it has a prophetic reason of why Satan's doing this. Anyway, let's take a look. So as you know, the LGBT activists are unrelenting in their agenda. And again, when I mention the LGBT activists, I'm not talking about individuals that are trying to get out of the LGBT lifestyle, because these people need help. They need Jesus. They need Jesus to free them. I'm going after the agenda. And I'm going after the people who are using the agenda to destroy our way of life, basically. So I wanted to make that note. And this LGBT agenda first wanted to be recognized by society as a normal lifestyle. Well, they have done an effective job in doing that. As you know, June, they celebrated Pride Month, and about every company I saw, everywhere I went, was celebrating this. There used to be a time, like Jordan Peterson said, when pride was considered a sin in the Bible, and now pride is exalted. And anyway, it's just ironic. But anyway, they wanted to have the right to marry. Now they do, right? They wanted equal rights, and they already had. But now they have more rights than the average person. But see, that's not enough. There are elements now being pushed through the transgender movement, which is an outgrowth of the LGBT movement, that have popped up in the last 5-7 years possibly, and is front and center on the war on morality, values, culture, Judeo-Christian ethics, Christianity, nationalism. It's all attacking this. It's attacking Western society. It's attacking women, okay? And they're using the transgender agenda to do all of this. And again, this is why they want to groom kids at an early age in the schools. And this is why these teachers and administrators of schools are so gun-ho about it. They're completely bought into this leftist agenda and don't realize many of the times that it's actually meant for the destruction of society. And so they're grooming kids. Disney's grooming kids. The cartoons are grooming kids, okay? And through the media and through music and Hollywood, everybody is accepting now transgenderism, okay? And it is spreading everywhere. It's not just in America. It's in all of Western society. And they're wanting everyone's approval, and they're wanting acceptance. And if you don't accept the transgender lifestyle, then they will persecute you in many, many ways, whether it's verbally. Eventually, they're going to persecute us economically, which they're already starting to do. They're going to persecute you legally and physically. You can see some of this economic and legal issues starting with having guys who are pretending to be girls participate in sporting events and winning money for it. And so it makes an economic impact. Well, according to the Daily Wire, just to show you how forceful and hostile they are. The House Democrats introduced a transgender Bill of Rights. And it's supposed to, quote unquote, protect and codify the rights of transgender and non-binary people under the law, ensure their access to medical care, shelter, safety, and economic security. Now, here's my thing. Doesn't the Bill of Rights protect that? Why do they need extra rights? Access to medical care? There's no problem there. Access to shelter? There's no problem there. Access to safety? There's no problem there. Access to economic security? There's no problem there. What are we talking about, man? We're talking about them giving positive rights, not inalienable rights that come from God, but positive rights that come from the government, and giving them more rights than the average citizen. Yes. So this is led by Democratic Washington Representative Pramila Jayapal, and this is H.R. 1209. And the purpose of it is to amend the Civil Rights Act of 1964 to prohibit discrimination on the basis of sex, including gender identity and sex characteristics in public accommodations and federally funded programs and activities. Basically, in essence, this bill would attack all women. What it does, it proposes amending federal education laws to ensure that students can participate on sports teams that best align with their gender identities. In other words, they're going to have allowance of males jumping into female sports. It'll destroy female sports. And they're going to use facilities that best align with their gender identity, which means these guys who are acting as a girl can go into a girl's locker. Are there problems with that? Of course. We've already seen problems. Girls getting raped and molested as these perverts walk in there pretending to be girls, whether that's in a Target or in a school. I mean, come on. But that's what it allows us to do. So basically, this is an attack on the privacy and the social ability and the economic ability of women. And it's just insane, but I want you to think about this. Transgenderism attacks women, okay? It puts women to having no rights again, okay? But there's a spiritual aspect to this. And if I take you back to the book of Genesis, God tells Satan, I will put enmity between you and the woman. And so that enmity between Satan and women has lasted all through man's history. Women have always been considered, property and second-class citizens and things of that nature. And I'm not talking about women's liberation. I'm talking about a woman being made in the image of God and playing her role in a complementary way with men. Well, Satan's enmity towards women has always put women down to make them nothing more than cattle or property or something like that. Well, this is what's happening now. Transgender rights steal the rights of women and make women have no rights whatsoever. That's been what they're aiming at. So you can see the satanic bent towards this against women. And by the way, if I even project into the future, we all know where this is going. Antichrist does not regard women. And the essence is he's like his father. They have enmity with women. So no doubt Satan hates humanity, but of all humanity he hates women. Okay? That's always why who he targets is women. Anyway, that's what transgenderism about. But again, there's a bigger picture here. It's not just targeting women, it's targeting some other things. And so basically now, the transgender movement is attacking the creative order of God and the fact that people now can't even define who a woman is, right? They can't. They won't do that. They can't define what a male is either. They believe males can menstruate. I mean, it's ridiculous. Or that a male can have a baby, right? It's stupid. And so now what's at stake is they're affecting and going after the creative order of God. That's the big picture. And they're using mafia-type tactics and legal tactics to use this new weapon that they have to destroy our society. And they've done such a good job at doing this is that many young people around the age of puberty, right? And with their crazy parents are allowing them to transition because they don't feel like they're in the right body or they're somehow attracted to the same sex. So instead of sending them to counseling and letting them know that this is part of puberty and there's a lot of hormones going on, you just gotta let this pass and then you will return back to normal, instead of affirming them in their sex, in their gender, now you have people grooming them saying, well, you might be the other sex, you're just in the wrong body. And that's ridiculous. And that's what it's happening to many teenage girls. Unfortunately, there's been an offshoot about this teenage girl phenomenon, and it's coming because of racism. I know that sounds weird, but you know how the schools are pushing so much racism, that white people are racist, they're born racist. So a lot of these girls who are so-called transitioning to be a boy, they're typically white. And some research has been done, and it's studied that these girls don't want to be the bad guy in the schools. They're being told that white people are bad. And so in order to escape that persecution, they're joining in with the LGBT transgender group, because at least there, they won't be picked on, they'll be affirmed, and they'll be liked, okay? So a guy did the research, his name is Lior Sapir. He was on the Dennis Prager show and he talked about this. So I want to play a clip. I want you to listen to what he's saying, because this is the phenomenon going on with girls right now.
My thesis is rather simple. It's that there are two prongs of what we nowadays call wokeness, especially as it appears in the school system, in the K-12 school system. One is the critical race theory component, and the other is what has become known as gender ideology. And so what I try to do in this piece is to show that these are actually deeply connected one to the other. And I try to show it more from the perspective of the gender piece. And what I show, and this is based on, extensive interviews with parents and parent group leaders, most of them in California, although some of them in other states, is that this phenomenon of teenagers, and in particular teenage girls, coming out as trans, or in some cases queer or non-binary, all of these kind of new sexual identity labels, that it actually has a lot to do with messaging that they hear and absorb surrounding race. And, when I tell you my argument, you're going to probably say, oh, okay, well, that makes perfect sense. But, it's the kind of thing that you really have to dig deep and look into what's going on the ground in order to see clearly. And that is that these are young teenagers, very impressionable. Most of them are highly intelligent, a little bit socially awkward. This stuff is going around right around the time of puberty, when they're acutely attuned to their social status and how others in their environment judge them and view them. And these teenagers are absorbing all of this messaging about race, about how horrible it is to be white, about how they are oppressors by virtue of being white, and there's nothing they can do about it. A lot of this messaging comes from and is institutionalized by California's ethnic studies curriculum. Other states have the same curriculum, so I think we can safely assume that a lot of this is going on elsewhere. But California seems to be unique in just its progressive politics. So these kids are absorbing all of this messaging about how awful it is to be white. But at the same time, the school is throwing them a lifeline, because it's telling them that for people who identify as LGBTQ plus, whatever other letters you want to add in there, let's just call it the Rainbow Coalition. For those who belong to the Rainbow Coalition, in some sense, they also are oppressed. They're victims of perhaps different social systems, but they're victims nevertheless. And so in a progressive place like California, of course, the more victim points that you have, the higher your status on the social hierarchy. And these kids are, as I said, very intelligent, and they quickly understand that. And because, one of the things that I point out in my piece is that there's kind of the mainstream understanding of gay rights is that one is simply born that way, right? Nobody chooses to be gay or lesbian. It's just kind of an innate property of persons that you're either born with or you're not. But that's not the case with trans and queer. With those two categories, well, I should say with trans, there's an open debate among researchers as to what extent it can be attributed to biological causes. But the vast, vast majority of these teenagers who are coming out as trans are not born with some, neurological abnormality or anything like that. They are responding to social cues, to social incentives, and they correctly perceive that if they self-identify as queer or trans, they can, if not opt out of being a white oppressor, they can at least mitigate the social costs that come from that category.
So as you can see from this, they absorb the message about race and that being white is bad, so it throws them right into a victim status of LGBT or transgender. So that makes sense of why a lot of these girls are doing that. But anyway, furthermore than that, everything has been institutionalized for this. They're institutionalized the curriculum in schools for this, in colleges, universities, TV, movies, all of it. It's institutionalized in Western culture now. And so people, because they don't have a moral anchor, because they don't know the Bible, they don't know that Deuteronomy 22:5 goes against transgenderism, that the Bible's full of passages, I think 7 altogether, that are anti-sodomy. And so they just don't know that, and so they go along with it. And the churches don't help out either, because many of the churches are gay affirming anyway. And so the pressure to conform, the pressure from the outside is too much for them. If you and I do not possess a moral anchor from the Bible, we will succumb to any temptation, any wave of wind that comes through our lives. And that's what's happening to a lot of the culture. And this whole transgender thing and LGBT thing, to throw in there, is very damaging to people. Extremely damaging psychologically, damaging physically. I mean, the psychological damage, most of these people want to commit suicide. The physical damage, obviously STDs, and the other physical damages, they're going to Frankenstein doctors, altering their biology on the outside. And it's irreparable when they do things like that. It's just sick. And anyway, I want you to see this clip from this 23-year-old girl that Tucker Carlson interviewed, and listen to what she says about the psychological damage that she went through.
I am Helena. I'm 23 years old. When I was about 15, I started using Tumblr. I had an eating disorder since I was pretty young. There was a lot of messages that said, if you feel bad about your body, that means you're trans. I was just going through this period of like, I don't like how I'm treated as a cis person. I don't want to be cis because cis means you're uncool and you're privileged and you're an oppressor and you're bad, and I don't want to be that. In that way, I was really incentivized to try to figure out a way to make my voice heard in these communities. And obviously I can't change my race. I can't really change my sexuality. So the only thing left was to start playing around with the gender stuff. So I decided to call myself a demi-girl, which is one of the 40 million genders. And that basically means that I'm mostly a girl, but I'm a little bit not a girl, which is just like, what does that even mean? And then after that, I went to demi-boy. And then after that, I went to gender fluid. And after that, I eventually went to trans boy. But all this took like 2 or 3 years of just going through this repetitive cycle of changing this identity and changing it again. And it was just never enough. There was a lot of hopelessness for a long time, a lot of regret. The feeling of regret was intense.
It's heartbreaking, isn't it? It's heartbreaking what they're doing to kids. And remember what the Lord said. if you cause one of these little ones to stumble, it would be better for you to have a millstone tied around your neck and thrown into the deepest oceans, because that's what they're really in effect doing. They're making kids sin in the most grotesque way possible. An abomination, right? Anyway, let's return back to the globalists. What are they up to? Why are they using this? Why are they funding this? Why do all these companies that support the globalist agenda using this? Right? Well, again, they're wanting to destroy several things in society. It definitely is an attack on women, right? And I showed you the satanic aspect to it. But what they're trying to do is destroy Western society once and for all. They're on a fast track to get the global government in place. And the one thing you have to do to get it in place is you have to destroy the current system. And they're destroying the current system in many ways. They're doing it economically, right? But this is another way, is through LGBT and transgender agenda. So you have to break down a society, you have to break down the morals and values and ethics of that culture. That's the first thing to go. And once you get that, you can hit the economics and you can hit the food and everything and just break and crumble down the society. Because at the core of all of this, this is their slogan of build back better, right? Build back better. Build what back better? That's building back what they destroy. Here's the funny thing. Satan and his followers, all they know how to do is destroy. They don't know how to build anything. And so they destroy things. And that's what it's about, destroying Western society. But to go deeper than destroying Western society to usher in globalism, the real target is not just simply Western society. The real target is Christianity. It's the Judeo-Christian ethics and morals that Christianity holds to, which was once found in Western society and is no longer being found. So they're in effect destroying that. And so Satan's attempt through the globalists is to destroy any vestige of a creator, any vestige of truth of God, the Bible, Jesus, salvation, creation, the kingdom to come, and introduce then the whore of Babylon, a religion to replace Christianity, right? And so it's not just simply to go to a global government, it's to go to a global religious system, which is this big, massive, supra-ecumenical religion called the Whore of Babylon, that tries to unite the whole global government. And again, we've seen this tactic before. Dictators, authoritarians understand that you've got to have a glue that unifies people, and typically that glue is false religion, right? When Constantine united the Roman Empire, what did he do? He used Christianity, a false version of it, by the way, to unite the Roman Empire. And that's when everything went haywire, when the church married the state, and the church went crazy, allowing all kinds of things to come into it. But at least Constantine knew that if you're going to unite an empire, you have to do it with religion. And he used a perverted version of Christianity to do it. Anyway, if you recall, and you study the book of Revelation, you recall that the imperial Rome, which is represented by the beast empire, right, that Daniel predicted, and then you see it in the book of Revelation, it carries the whore on top. It supports the whore. And so it uses the whore to be a unifying element to get the global government to be stabilized and kind of to unify things, right? And so we see that from Scripture. And so in order to have the whore be able to unite things, you got to get rid of Christianity. That's the problem, because Christianity stands against the whore. The whore's values are opposite of the Bible. The whore's ethics are opposite of the Bible. And in the whore, they make up things. They make up fake crises like global warming, man-made global warming, or whatever. They make up stuff like the food shortages. That's on them. They caused this. Like the gas prices. They want to blame Russia. It's not Russia. It's their stupid policies, their eco-friendly Sierra Club policies that want to destroy fossil fuels and get us all on electricity. And it's not like that's an accident. They did it on purpose because they don't want us having freedom. They want us to be controlled. And so the best thing to control people is get them off fossil fuels, put them on electric. Why are they doing with the high prices of food? The high prices of food because they want control of the food supply and the economics. So it all makes sense. And so in order to do that, you've got to have a unifying religion. So this idea of going to electric, the religious aspect is, well, we've got to save the planet. It's a moral thing, you know. The food aspect, well, it's a moral thing to save the planet, not to eat meat. So we're going to actually give you meat that was created in a petri jar or a petri dish, and you're going to eat fake meat. Yuck. And they're trying to introduce this, by the way. And so they got their own morals and ethics, and we as Christians stand against those ethics and morals of the whore of Babylon, right? So this LGBT agenda and the transgender is seeking to destroy the values and morals and ethics of Christianity. And then they want to destroy Christian ministries as well that oppose them. And this is why, you know, the globalists are using groups to destroy certain ministries that help get people out of this lifestyle, that do reparative therapy, that help them leave this through Christ. So, interesting enough, Christian News Wire ran a story a while back, and again, to show you, you know, what they're up to, how hostile they are towards these Christian groups that are trying to help people get out of this lifestyle, and they come after them and they want to shut them down and shut out the counseling and keep people in these destructive lifestyles. So the article was entitled, LGBT Activists Vow to Shut Down Christian Ministry. Your faith be damned. The article goes on and says, no longer content with widespread acceptance, activists are fighting to eliminate any program aimed at helping those struggling with same-sex attraction or gender identity. They say that the level of hatred and the bullying, which you'll see a lot by the LGBT community and the transgender community, there's a lot of bullying going on, is not anything like anything we've seen, they said. This is according to Stephen Black, who once lived as a gay man for 8 years, and that was, again, over 35 years ago, but he made this statement because he's the executive director of First Stone Ministries, trying to help people get out of this lifestyle, and so now the gay activists have put him in the crosshairs. He goes, in the last 10 years, there has been an increasing attack on gospel-centered messages of freedom from homosexuality. Activists are intent on shutting down any counseling that leads to new life in Christ and freedom from homosexuality. And let me add this. These LGBT agenda folks that are getting real hostile are doing death threats to these cake bakers, to anyone that won't host a wedding of theirs. There are many cake bakers that are under the threat of death from the LGBT agenda. This is not a nice organization. They threaten death. They're bullies. Stephen Black goes on to say he wrote a book called Freedom Realized, and he reveals that 70% of people who want freedom from a destructive same-sex lifestyle actually find it. So think about that. Many of them go in there and they then want out of it. And of course, in his book, Stephen Black and his colleagues examined 25 years of case studies, right? And found incontrovertible evidence that people can and do change. Amen. That's true. Through Christ they can. He says that the idea of gay Christianity is an affront to everything Christ died for. And giving people hope is what we should be about as sincere Christians. Not just enabling them to stay stuck in a harmful lifestyle. Well, amen to that. He's right. He said freedom from homosexuality comes only through a new life of absolute surrender and a complete dependence on Christ. He's right. He experienced it. So freedom from this lifestyle is possible, but is being suppressed. Because to the globalists, to the politicians that want this, they benefit from this lifestyle. They benefit from it because it destroys Christianity. It's a new weapon that they're using, And transgender is the new club, it's the new sword that they're using. And they want us all to accept people's non-reality of their identification about themselves. And unfortunately, many people and Christians succumb to this. Do you understand that when you go along with transgenderism, you might as well say to a schizophrenic that the voices in your head are real? That's how bad it is. It's a non-reality, and it needs to stop. But anyway, Christians are not helping the situation. In fact, according to a new Pew research, a majority of U.S. Christians, 54%, okay, now say that homosexuality should be accepted rather than discouraged by society. 54%. It's half. Now, I would say the stat's probably even higher. But think about that, guys. We have reached a point on a black and white issue that the majority of Christians disagree with the Bible. Just unbelievable. And then in the same token, we have the Pope, Pope Francis, supporting transgenderism. He's already supporting LGBT. So at the end of his general audience on June 22nd, the Pope met with a group of 6 transgender people who were accompanied by LGBT promoting priests and a nun and a mother of a transgender boy. Now here's the thing, even in Catholic dogma, LGBT and transgenderism is out of bounds. But yet this guy doesn't even work under the auspices of the Vatican or Catholic dogma. So the Catholics ought to wake up and realize you've got a problem on your hands. But anyway, when people view Christianity, they do not see the difference between Protestants, Catholics, Orthodox. They lump us all together, right? We believe the Catholic Church is a false church because it teaches a works-based salvation. But the problem is you and I get lumped in with the Catholic Church. And so someone on the outside says, hey, look, the Pope, even the Pope, is affirming the transgenderism and the LGBT, right? So they think that now Christians are approving of that, when we know the Pope is not a Christian. He denies the essentials of doctrine of faith. And we know the Bible is against it. Anyway, these transgender people went to talk to the Pope, and the Pope affirmed him. Look at what he said to one transgender man who now lives as a woman, claimed the Pope told him to always be himself or myself. No, you can't stay as yourself. You need Christ, and you need Christ to change you. Yourself is going to kill you. One of the group, Elisa Nobile, is a 43-year-old man who now lives as a woman, and he told fan page It, I guess that's a website, that, quote, it was exciting. We felt welcomed. And this Alicia Nobile presented himself to Pope Francis as a, quote, as a transgender girl. It's a dude pretending to be a girl. But said that Francis replied, he didn't care who I was, that we have one Father, as if he wanted to tell me, you are a sister. Really? Look, people are called children of God, sons and daughters of God, when they come to faith in Him. Scripture makes it plain. Not everybody is a child of God. You have to believe in Jesus in order to be a child of God. That's very plain in Scripture. But anyway, this guy, Nobile, added that Francis told him he needs to always be himself, and not be wrapped up in prejudice against the church. The 43-year-old man, get this, has a degree in social sciences, but currently earns his living as a sex worker. Yeah, so the dude's a prostitute, okay? And the Pope is saying, keep rolling, man, you're good. You have the same father as we do. No, he has a different father. So he praised Francis welcoming the transgender group, saying that the meeting with the Pope was an important message. I instead felt welcome, taken by the hand and embraced. In the month of Pride, I think it was an important message. Yeah, it was satanic what the Pope did. It's evil. So my point about all of this, we're getting attacked from within Christendom. People who claim to be Christians are embracing this as well. The Pope is. Not that I'm saying the Pope is a believer. He's not. Not that I'm saying the Catholic Church is a true church. It's not. But what I'm saying is we get lumped up into them. And so now society is saying, well, the churches are all on board on this. No, the churches are not on board. The remnant, the Philadelphia element, is not on board on this because it violates Scripture. So we're not being helped, is all I'm trying to say, not only from the outside, but from the inside as well. And unfortunately, this is permeated, into the church. And now we used to see, and I couldn't believe this, lesbian and gay pastors in the pulpit, right? That should have been it, but it hasn't stopped there. So now we have transgender so-called pastors pastoring churches, and I put that term loosely, pastoring. And then we now have even drag queen pastors in the church. Yeah, remember how the drag queens used to do story hour in the libraries? Now they're doing it in the church and acting as the pastor. This is insane. It's all over. And again, guys, I never thought I would see this. As you see these pictures rolling through, I never thought I would see this. We have now went beyond Sodom and Gomorrah. Drag queen pastors? Really? How bad does it have to get? Wow. So now let's understand this from a biblical standpoint, okay? Let's understand why Satan would use this tactic of transgenderism. Because the basic idea behind it has to do with what it means to be human, to be made in God's image. We are image bearers, right? Genesis 1:27, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female, he created them. End of story, simple, right? He made humanity and he made two types of humans, female and male. That's it. And these individuals are made in his image. So let's talk about being made in the image of God. What this is an attack on is the attack on the image of God and the maleness and femaleness of human beings. Okay, so being made in the image of God means we resemble God in some aspects. We're not talking physically, because God's spirit, right? But we resemble the invisible, some of the invisible attributes of God in our immaterial part of us. This is called God's communicable attributes, not incommunicable attributes like omniscience, omnipresence, those kinds of things. Communicable attributes involve, like, we have a will, we have volition, right? That's being made in his image. We have the ability to love, right? We have an intellect, we have rationality, we have reasoning ability, we have freedom of choice, we have a conscience, and on that conscience is the law of God on our hearts. It's our moral compass. We have creative abilities, right? We have emotions, we have the ability to be moral and to be relational like God, right? We actually were created for fellowship. All of these are, of course, are in a finite sense, but these are some of the attributes that God has given us as human beings that's how it makes us into his image. And of course, the sin nature that we all possess mars this image, but we still have this image, which gives us dignity, value, and respect, okay? So here's the thing. Why are we equipped with these attributes? And maybe the answer to this will answer why Satan is attacking this through transgenderism. First of all, being made in God's image gives us dominion over nature, right? Verse 28 of Genesis chapter 1, then God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply. That's a procreation aspect. But notice what here about the dominion. Fill the earth and subdue it. Have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. This is what's called the dominion mandate. So fill the earth and subdue it. Fill the earth with people and subdue it. What does subdue mean? It means that humans are to take the natural resources of planet Earth and use them for humanity's benefit, which would include, guys, fossil fuels. We are to take the gas, take the oil, and use it to benefit humanity. So you understand that this attack on the image of God sees itself in the green movement, where the green movement does not want to subdue the natural resources, wants everything to go back as not subduing it, that man doesn't have a right to subdue it, and just let things go wild. That's one of the aspects of hitting the image of God, so that people won't be trying to make life easier by subduing nature. They want nature to be left alone, don't they? And then it says have dominion over it. That means that you and I are at the top of nature. We have authority. Not the fish, not the birds, not an animal. We have the authority, and we do what is necessary for humanity. Now, this doesn't mean going out and killing animals to make them extinct. That's not what it's talking about. It's talking about animals don't come ahead of humans. And yet, that's what the globalists want. They want humans to understand they're on the level of an animal. And therefore, we can treat humans like an animal. This is going to go into soft euthanasia, or the useless mouth breeders, or the useless food eaters, as they're going to call it. When food is scarce and energy is scarce, they're going to say, well, these people are nothing but animals. Let's just get rid of them. They don't produce anything. And and so since they're not over the birds of the air or the beasts of the field, they're like a dog. So let's eliminate them. And that's a very subtle thing, but once you dehumanize people, you can say, well, they're human, but they're not a person, right? That's what they do to babies in the womb, and what they're going to do to elderly, and what they're going to do to physically handicapped, and what they're going to do to the mentally handicapped. Well, they're human, but they can't function normal. And so that will open the door to not only that's happening now, infanticide, but you're going to see people die because of this, especially in healthcare. They'll do rationing of healthcare. Now, how do I know this? Because they've done it in every totalitarian regime. They eliminate the useless food eaters. They just kill them off. If you can't produce, then you're out of here. What did Hitler do? Got rid of the mentally handicapped, the physically handicapped, got rid of the Jews because he dehumanized them, right? And anyone that wasn't fit for society, the elderly, he got rid of the elderly and says, okay, I've solved your economic and medical problem. I've got rid of people who are a drain on society. That's why they're using transgenderism. The second reason why transgenderism is hitting the image of God and trying to destroy it is because the image of God gives humans dignity and respect. This is why human life is sacred at all points of human life. And this is why we're valuable to God, and why our bodies are sacred and should not be desecrated. As a believer, our bodies don't belong to us, they belong to the Lord. But bodies are sacred. Our bodies are to be respected for how they were designed, not to go to some Frankenstein doctor and do life-altering surgeries that try to change the gender because the person doesn't feel or think they're of that gender. And so transgenderism hits at the dignity and respect of the human body. Third, transgenderism hits at being made in the image of God, because the image of God gives us the ability to commune with God and others. Being made in God's image allows us to be relational, vertically and horizontally, to have fellowship with other people. God is relational, right? And we say that God's relational based on the Trinity, because the Father loves the Son loves the Father, the Holy Spirit loves the Son, loves the Father. It's a relationship within the Trinity, showing you that that's how love happens. So it's in the triune nature of God. Well, anyway, the way we are created is to have fellowship with God and fellowship with others. But here's the deal. When people don't accept the image of God in them, right? They deny how they're created in the image of God. To be relational, they won't be relational anymore. In fact, their relationships will be fouled up. Their relationships actually go haywire. So if you see the kinds of people when they're transgender, LGBT, and you see the people they're related to, the only people that they can relate to, it shows you that there's a major dysfunction in their relationships. They're not around healthy people that can help them get out of that lifestyle. They always will surround themselves with dysfunctional people that keep them in that lifestyle. And that's the idea of being made in the image of God. In the image of God, we want to have healthy relationships. We are relational, and when we're spiritually healthy, we don't get into relationships that are going to pull us down into sin, right? Because remember the principle, bad company corrupts good character. We always want to be around people that encourage us, that build us up, that encourage us to follow Christ. But when you mar the image of God and you don't obey that image, it will hurt your relationships, and your relationships become dysfunctional. And that's what we see, right? Think about in the LGBT community, the amount of physical battery that happens in gay relationships, in homosexual relationships, the amount of physical abuse is off the charts. Off the charts. And the amount of partners a gay man will have in 1 year, on average, is 8 partners in 1 year. That's on average, okay? So it's a very dysfunctional relational lifestyle. And furthermore, when you flush this thing out about relationships, it goes to the most intimate of relationships that you see in Genesis 2:28. It is not good that man should be alone. I will make him a helper comparable to him. And so the most intimate of human relationships is the marriage relationship, right? Between a man and a woman, the two genders, and coming together in the most intimate relationship, the two becoming one. That cannot happen when you have two girls or two guys or whatever, or a transgender and lesbian, gay, whatever. That intimate relationship cannot happen. But here's the thing. You're like, well, who cares? You better care, because the way society functions is based on the image of God and the closest of relationships, which is marriage. And marriage between a man and a woman creates the nuclear family in which kids are to be raised in. That's the idea of be fruitful and multiply in this bond of marriage. Therefore, the healthiest way to raise a child or children is through a man and a woman in the bonds of marriage. But it even goes further than that. The bonds of marriage and the nuclear family serves as the basis for society. It's the basis for culture. It's the basis for how we live in a community. And then if you have the society, the culture, and the community, if you have that right, then it supports a nation. So if you're going to build a nation, you have to start with the family unit. So how did God build the nation of Israel? He started with Abraham, right? And Sarah. And he built a nation from that couple, didn't he? And from that couple, the whole nation of Israel came. So it is the building blocks of a nation. Now, Satan knows this, and that's why he inspires the globalists to attack not only marriage, but attack gender. Because if he can foul that up and break up marriage, break up gender, then you won't have a society and you won't have a nation. And what are they trying to do? They're trying to get rid of all the nations so that we can all go global. So you can see the agenda. Now, I'm not saying the globalists know this, but I know Satan knows this. He knows what to attack, and that's what he's doing through the globalists. That's what it's about, is to destroy nations in order to get to a one world government. Furthermore, if we dig a little further, our identities as human beings are wrapped up in how God created us. Now, we were knit together in our mother's womb, right? That God knit us together. And according to Zechariah 12, God is the one who put the soul and the spirit in our bodies. at the time of conception. So, our identity is formed and completed by how God designed us. So you have either one of two identities as being a human. Either God made you male or God made you female. And the way to know this is found in your body. Okay? Your body tells you how you were created. So the body is the signal. Okay? So this is what people are ignoring, their body signal about their maleness or femaleness, and the body is representing the DNA structure of how God created you in the DNA. You can't get past it. Your DNA will say you're a male or a female. That's it. It's that simple. And by the way, your body is a signal to how you were created in your soul and spirit. Your spirit and soul align with your body. So this idea that, well, I was put in the wrong body. I don't feel or think I'm this way. I feel like I'm another way. No, that's actually going against your soul and your spirit, because your body tells you what kind of soul or spirit you have. Is it a female spirit or is it a male spirit? Okay? Or a soul. It's all the same, right? You're either male or female. That's it. And your soul and your spirit are linked to that body. You're male or female. And so when these people say, oh, I don't know what I am, I feel I'm in the wrong body, they're going against not only biology, but they're going against the spiritual factors in how God made them, male and female. And so with that being said, again, they're believing lies, they're deceived, and they're believing how they feel, or they believe in what they're told or what they think, instead of looking to the evidence of their bodies. And man, I'll tell you this, if you don't know who you are, you will be lost. And the fact that these young people don't know who they are, even though their body is screaming to them what they are, that means they're lost. And and when you have a population that's lost, they're easy to control. That's the point. They want them lost. They want them to not know up or down, right and left. They want them lost because they have to control them. And many times, because they won't let therapy or counseling happen for these people, many times in 20 years of counseling, when I talk to people, when they have same-sex attraction or whatever it might be, it's usually because of trauma. They were raped, they were molested, there was incest, pornography, or some type of painful experience, a trauma, especially with someone with the opposite sex or the same sex. And you know what? You can counsel these people and help them through Christ. And what happens though is this trauma, if it's never dealt with, if the rape or the molestation or the incest or whatever happened to the person is not dealt with in Christian counseling, they'll believe the lie of Satan, and they will feel and think a different way than what the Bible's telling them. They'll think they're gay, they'll think they're lesbian, they'll think they're transgender, and it's just a lie because they've never worked on the issues. You're not born gay. There's no such thing as a gay gene, even though people in Christianity keep repeating that. There is no scientific evidence behind that. But here's what happens. Satan is clever enough to indoctrinate people early on in life when they suffer trauma. And then they personalize it, and then they start thinking irrational thoughts, and that's what causes a lot of the problems. But that can be worked on in counseling, and they can overcome that through Christ. I've seen it. So that's what they're trying to suppress. They're trying to suppress that help that they can get. And 4, being made in God's image gives dignity, respect, and sacredness to the sex act, right? Because the LGBT and the transgender, all this is about is sex, right? It's not only just their identity, it's what they want to do with it. That's the problem. And the sex act is to be between the two genders, male and female, in the bonds of marriage for what? 2 things: procreation, be fruitful and multiply, and then, according to the Song of Solomon, It's for bonding the couple. So, not every time people in marriage have sex are going to produce kids. But what is it for? It's for bonding. You bond emotionally, you bond mentally, you bond spiritually, and you bond physically in the sex act. That's how the two actually become one. And it's an incredible bonding experience. But here's the thing. It's made for only males and females in the bonds of relationship in a marriage. That's it. But LGBT and transgender takes that which is sacred, the sex act, and misuses it out for other purposes. Homosexuality, lesbianism, and that's really all it is. And so what does that do? That destroys the fabric of society when the sex act is not maintained within the bonds of marriage for procreation, for bonding. So you have illegitimate children being produced, then people who are for abortion will kill their babies, and then you've got STDs, and you have all kinds of other things happening, which then tears our moral fabric down. And ever since the 60s, with the sexual revolution, we have been on a fast downhill sexually to where it's literally destroyed people. Now here's the thing. Remember I told you that sex is for bonding. When you misuse sex, you will bond to all the wrong things. And therefore, what's left in that person is an inability to bond to anybody. Okay? They just lose the ability to bond. And you never get it back. That's why we try to warn teenagers, don't have premarital sex, because you will bond with those people and they will steal something that's afforded to your wife or your spouse, and you'll have a hard time bonding in marriage. That's what happens to a lot of people. They simply can't bond because of so much bonding that happened prior to marriage. They have a piece of them over here, a piece of them over there, a piece of them over here, and they have a hard time overcoming the lack of bonding because they've misused it. That's why we want people to be celibate and a virgin until they marry. But not with the sex act. Satan knows how to destroy people and destroy relationships. So if you think about this on a societal level, if I can destroy people's ability to have proper relationships, then the society's doomed. I will destroy society by people not having the ability to have healthy relationships and misusing, what they were given by God. So it's very clever, it's insidious, but it is working and they're doing it. And Satan is laughing all the way through this. So at the end of all of this, the LGBT agenda, the transgender agenda, now being weaponized, it's first and foremost rebellion against God. You have to see that, okay? It destroys the person. That's number two. It stops procreation, right? Satan hates human beings. He wants human beings to be destroyed. So therefore, that's why he stops procreation. He doesn't want people to be procreated. He wants to reduce the human population. Doesn't that sound familiar? What does the globalists want? Reduce the population. And in destroying people, they destroy people to control them. That's why. It destroys others. The transgender is meant to destroy others, not just the transgender that's meaning to destroy, but it destroys others. So when these drag queen story hours happen in the public library or they're happening in the church, it destroys children and messes them up so bad that those kids are going to be scarred for the rest of life for what they've experienced. It's grooming, it's exposure that could make them go into lesbianism and homosexuality or transgenderism. It furthermore destroys society. Just like I said about Disney doing the Buzz Lightyear makeout session with two guys, or now Baymax, the new show that's coming up, and Baymax is this like balloon type of creature, and he's in the store asking for tampons, which is ridiculous. And then a transgender character with a male voice comes in the store and recommends another type of tampons to him. You're like, this is a children's cartoon. What are you doing? Again, it's grooming. It's to destroy children. It's to destroy society. Furthermore, it destroys the Judeo-Christian binary society. That's what our society is. It is a binary society. And that's the only way society can run, if it's binary, male and female, because those are two counterparts that have to coexist in a harmony. Males are created a certain way and females are created a certain way. And when you put them together in marriage, they complement each other. That's how God designed it. So it's a binary society. If you don't have a binary society, it's going to crumble. It destroys institutions. Look at the schools. They're destroyed. Forget about putting your kids in public school. They're grooming your kids for this. It destroys colleges, universities. It has destroyed politics. Now the politics are whacked out on this stuff. It destroys everything. It destroys the medical community. Think about the doctors who are going to be forced to do these Frankenstein surgeries on little girls or little boys because they believe there's something else. It's gruesome. It's sickening. Think about that. It's destroyed those institutions. Again, that's on purpose. It destroys other rights. Remember I said it's meant to attack females. It's basically, transgenderism is going to take away the rights of females. It's a direct assault on females. And again, like I said, it's satanic, right? So like for instance, this Leah Thompson of Penn who's swimming against women and he's winning all the things. He's taking their rights away. Or how about this Ricky Trace? He's a 29-year-old biological male who came in first place at a New York women's skateboard competition. He's a father of 3 and a combat veteran. And he's pretending to be a girl, and he won over a 13-year-old girl. Again, taking away the rights of women. So basically, this is an attack on God's order and the way he has designed nature. It's Satan's attempt to usurp God. It's a way of getting control of society and to make society do what Satan wants them to do. And so this is purely satanic. What the globalists are doing is purely satanic, whether they know it or not. In Satan's world, he wants to design a counterfeit messianic kingdom. He wants to copy Christ's kingdom. And in his kingdom, everybody should be androgynous. No sex, no genders. And in his kingdom, he doesn't want too many humans because he hates humans. In fact, he would rather have us all dead and have his kingdom with his fallen angels to rule over the planet, right? It is being used to destroy the churches. Now the LGBT agenda has published a gay Bible. It's called the Queen James Bible. It's crazy. They've taken out all the homophobic interpretations in it. And then you can go to a website, not that I recommend this, but gaychurch.org, where it lets people know about gay-friendly services in your area. So again, it's not even destroying society, it's destroying the church. That's what this is about. Get rid of the church. Satan doesn't want the church here anymore. So what you have to understand is in order to get to a one-world government, the attack on God's order of creation must happen. And God is allowing it, because they have to break down society for Satan to be able to introduce his satanic utopia that defies God. See, God's crown jewel in creation is humanity, and Satan hates that. He wants him and his demons to rule and reign. And so it's to basically get rid of us. But here's the truth of the matter. Satan will not prevail. He's going to get a chance to attempt this. God's going to allow it. But if you read in Revelation 5, it says who the victor is. And it says this, "And I saw in the right hand of him who sat on the throne a scroll written inside and on the back, sealed with 7 seals. Then I saw a strong angel proclaiming with a loud voice, 'Who is worthy to open the scroll and loose its seals?' And no one in heaven or on earth or under the earth was able to open the scroll and look at it. So I wept much, because no one was found worthy to open and read the scroll or look at it. And one of the elders said to me, 'Do not weep. Behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, has prevailed to open the scroll and to loose its 7 seals.' And I looked, and behold, in the midst of the throne and of the 4 living creatures, and in the midst of the elders, stood a lamb as though he had been slain, having 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God sent out into all the earth. Then he came and took the scroll out of the right hand of him who sat on the throne." Now what is this about? Well, the scroll some theologians will say, represents the title deed of planet Earth, which Adam lost. Christ is the second Adam. And by what he went through, dying on a cross, rising, being buried and rising from the dead, and accomplishing salvation, but he also not only accomplished salvation, he accomplished the ability to give man's dominion back to him, right? And this is what the writer of Hebrews said in chapter 2. We don't see all these things in subject to humans, but we see Jesus. And the idea is Jesus won our dominion back. And so what Jesus must do with the scroll that he's been given, he has the authority to take that scroll from the Father, is the scroll will be unrolled to unleash the judgments to purge this world of evil, of sin and wickedness. He will bind Satan for 1,000 years along with his fallen angels and demons for 1,000 years, and to usher in the Messianic kingdom. Christ will prevail. So this whole idea of wiping out humanity, of destroying God's creative order, will not be successful. By the time of the second coming and the Battle of Armageddon, Jesus will put this all in order, destroy the Antichrist and false prophet, and put Satan in the pit, Tartarus, for 1,000 years. So the good news about this, guys, it is hard to watch what they're doing with this transgender movement and with kids, but it's going to come to an end, and it's going to come to an end of judgment. A judgment so bad nobody on God's green earth and who has ever existed in history has seen the wrath of God that's going to be poured down in the tribulation. So this will all come to an end. Unfortunately, we're going to watch it build, and we won't be here for the end of it. We'll get to see when it's destroyed by Jesus at the second coming. But until the rapture, we're going to see more of this. More an assault on our rights and women's rights, a destruction of society using the transgender movement. So what do we got to do? You have to fight and oppose it and resist it until the very end. You have to take your stand, even if it costs you. It might cost you your job. It might cost you family members. People may not like you anymore. But again, we're not saying that we don't want to help people get out of that lifestyle. We do. But we are saying that this lifestyle is going to destroy society as we know it. And that's the truth. So we speak the truth in love, help those who want to get helped out of that lifestyle, because there's ways to help through Jesus. But at the end, we have to be against this agenda and this transgender agenda, because it will destroy everything. With that said, a couple of announcements before we go. On our new website that we have up and running, go to the tab there and find Church Tracker. That's a big thing I want you to see. The Church Tracker tells you where churches may be in your area. We're starting to build this Church Tracker. Again, it's preliminary. It's just getting started. And we're starting to add remnant churches to this Church Tracker so that people say, when they say, I can't find a church in my area, be able to go on this map and find maybe something close to them. You might have to drive a ways. It just depends, man. We've had people drive 5 hours to be at our church. So it's possible. If you are part of a remnant church, then you can recommend your church to us. We're going to screen that church. But before you recommend that church, just make sure your church is not Arminian or Calvinist. Make sure your church is dispensational. Make sure your church is premillennial, okay? Make sure your church sees a difference between Israel and the church. Make sure your church is not woke. Make sure your pastor is on the right path, okay? Not afraid. Because we do not want to recommend the wrong churches to people who are looking for remnant churches. So let us know, but we'll let you know we're going to screen them. We're not into denominations. This is a time where denominations have went apostate. It's a time where people need to be independent. So, give a heads up to yourself about recommending a church in a denomination, whether it's Southern Baptist, Presbyterian USA, Methodist, or something like that, because most of these denominations have went apostate, okay? So think about that. Anyway, that's what's going on there in the website. Eventually, the second phase of the website will have a platform that we can stream our videos through and not have to worry about being shut down by YouTube or Rumble or BitChute or anything else. Second thing, get on our text alert system so we can text alert you when things change, if we need to give you a heads up about something. Be a part of our text alert system. Just fill out the information on this link and you'll be in the system. And thirdly, be praying for us, man, because we get a lot of heat, crazy things happening to us from the people on the internet that are trolls, psychopaths, evil people. You know, pray for us. And pray for us locally too. The infiltration from Satan comes locally as well. We have to deal with people sometimes. And so we're being constantly bombarded by infiltration and people who hate us and don't like us. So be praying for us. Second on this point is, if the Lord puts it on your heart to help us financially, we could use all the help we can get. We're building our building, hopefully in the fall. They're pushed it out into late fall now. Our electrical panel is stuck in Shanghai, and we can't get it. We're delayed in getting that, so we're praying for that. But it takes money to operate, obviously, to have this online program. It's vital to us. I know it's vital to you, so we want to keep this afloat financially. We want to make sure we pay the light bill, so to speak, as well. So we have a lot of things we got to take care of. So if the Lord puts it on your heart to help us out, man, it would be great. We would appreciate that. And thank you for all of you out there that are already financially donated to us and helped us. Man, your money goes a long way. It helps us do things that we couldn't normally do, and we appreciate it. Thank you so much. So we got to get running. And remember what Jesus said. When you see these things begin to happen, like attacking God's creative order through transgenderism, look up, lift up your heads, for your redemption draws near. God bless you. We'll see you next time.